Hi, I'm Lissie.
And I'm Simmons.
We're here to talk to you about stuff.
Especially history. We're doing a podcast about history.
Hi, we're the Ink Drinkers.
Contrary to our name, we don't actually drink ink.
We just drink tea and talk about history.
So join us as we learn about history.
Indeed.
Well, hello everybody. It is the Ink Drinker Historians. I'm Simmons.
I'm Lissie.
And we have a special guest today.
Tula.
This is Tula. And she is joining us for a very special episode of the Ink Drinker Historians.
Yep, so today we are going to read one headline from today, like today in history, May 11th, 2024. And then we are going to go through headlines that were on May 11th, 1924.
100 years ago today.
Yep.
Just to see what sort of things would be in the news back then, because that's interesting stuff, and we're historians and we like history. So,
Yep. So the headline that we chose from today in history
2024.
was Man traveling across the U.S. on his horse-drawn carriage. He's done it 4 other times.
We thought this was absolutely hilarious, because what sort of person does that now?
Indeed. This guy does. His name is Lee the Horse Logger. You heard that correctly. Lee the Horse Logger.
Mr. Horselugger.
And this is his 5th trip. He travels to see nursing homes, to meet people, to go to schools, do show and tell. He shows them his horse because a lot of people have never actually seen a horse.
This is a direct quote from him, is it not?
I can read the direct quote.
Read the direct quote.
Quote, I travel to see nursing homes to meet people, go to schools. I do my show and tell. This is a horse. You know, a lot of people have never seen a horse. Quote, unquote.
So, this sounds like a very interesting fellow, Lee the Horselugger.
Mhm.
But it's also mildly sad, because nowadays, people don't know what a horse is, whereas, in the cities 100 years ago, everybody had a horse. Well, not everybody had a horse, but they were the main source of transportation.
Mm-hmm. Yep. His horse's name, by the way, in case you were wondering, is Jesse. So that is today's article in history.
So now we thought we'd scroll through. I was looking up head titles. News lines. News titles. Headlines. Thank you. That. From 100 years ago. And I could not find a website that would let me actually view the articles themselves without having to pay, and I don't really want to pay for that right now. So, we're just going to look at the headlines, and that'll give us the news a little bit.
Yep, and don't mind us if you hear the occasional slurps. We are drinking raspberry tea,
Yeah, it's
not
very
ink.
good. Alright, so it's interesting. I find it interesting whenever I'm looking at old newspapers, is that they often... let's see, there we go. They often have, like, marriage announcements, like, or even graduation or birth announcements. Like, when my mom graduated, it was announced in the paper with her name. In fact, she even, this is funny, she even got a whole news article dedicated to her, because it wasn't when she was graduating, it was when she was going into high school, when she was 13, she requested that her father, who had a very large beard, would shave it off when she went into high school, because she had never seen him without a beard. So... He promised her and do his word. When she turned 13, he shaved his beard off, and they made front pages. Yeah.
Tula here actually, her birth announcement was in the newspaper.
Really?
Yes, it was.
We still have the clipping from it somewhere.
That's awesome. Yeah, that used to be a very common thing, but now there's so many people in the world, I guess, that if you announce them all, it would be a very full newspaper indeed. Also, newspaper have gone out of style.
True.
So, there's one in here as I'm scrolling down the list from May 11th, 2024. Marriage announcement 1. No title.
No title.
Let's see if we can find some exciting...
Trains that pass in the night.
Trains that pass in the night. That is... I would love to read the actual articles for some of these. Here's one that we thought interesting. Light ship men love their floating homes.
Despite the isolation and the roughness of anchorage at sea, they become restless when kept long ashore.
I can only assume this is referring to sailors.
Yeah, I don't think they had floating air homes
No.
back in the day.
They thought that we would today. But
We do, actually. There are some floating hot air balloon Airbnbs.
You're joking.
No, I'm not. They're out in Arizona, but
Wow.
we saw this me and my family saw this headline not long ago. It was very interesting. One of them is fashioned after the Up house from the movie Up, with all the balloons.
Huh.
So
That is cool.
Yeah.
Another one. Trend against the government.
Bobbing spreads to all ages of women. Fashion requires the small hat, and there's nothing to do but visit the barber shop.
Yeah, that's the Roaring 20s for you. Bob cuts on the way. That's the style.
Yeah.
I was discussing 1920s to 60s style with my sister the other day.
Oh, fun.
Here's a fun one. Coolidge praises pension for preachers.
Interesting.
That's a very fun one to read aloud.
Yeah.
Uncle Sam's fish experts save nation's baby fishes.
Artificial propagation prevents the depletion of the seafood supply. How culturists work into the spawning season.
Interesting. It was funny because Simmons found this article earlier, and at the same time I was scrolling my news articles, and there was a headline that said that in Indiana it is Free Fishing Day.
I want to go to Indiana now. That was funny that there's a news headline from today, 2024, about fishing, and then there's also one from 1924. Ooh, this is neat. Russia spurning Olympics to hold their own games in Moscow.
I find that interesting because Russia and Germany and all that, like, those countries have always done that sort of thing when they're mad at all the other nations. So apparently Russia was mad at everyone else today, 100 years ago, and decided to hold their own games in Moscow.
And Russia is still mad at everybody else. What else is new in the world?
Right?
Yeah, that's Russia for you.
That is indeed Russia for you. There's an article here that says, for listing careless drivers.
Yeah, I want to read the article, because what on earth does for listing careless drivers mean?
I don't know, maybe people that have a bad record or something.
Or something.
So, ladies and gentlemen, if you lived back in the 1920s, you might want to have watched your driving a little more and not gone 80 on the speedway instead of 75.
Otherwise, you might have made the headline on May 11th, 1924. Helen Fraser won't run for parliament.
Interesting.
That's good to know. I'm much wiser now than I was.
Tula here just found a 1944 penny.
That's cool.
It even has the wheat symbol on the back.
I have one from 1953, but 1944 is even cooler.
It is.
This is tragic. My brother was going through his room when he moved away, and he found a bunch of his old piggy bank.
Oh,
and he gave it to me, and I was going through it, and I found old coins from, I think some from the 1940s, 1950s, some foreign coins, and I thought, how cool. And this is when I was living 1940s every single day, which I still try to do. But I put them in this little old 1940s wallet I had and put them in my purse. And then I accidentally bought something with them, which I didn't intend to do. So now I don't have the old coins anymore, except for the one.
That's sad.
Yeah.
I understand how that is. Schoolgirls in politics. 3 daughters of Nathan L. Miller to aid Republicans.
Huh.
Interesting.
Yeah.
They don't let that happen anymore.
Oh, here's one that I loved. I'm gonna have to read it in an accent. Actually, no, you're gonna have to read it in an accent. I'm not very good at accents.
Okay. I'm warning you, my Russian accent is less than wished for.
It's better than mine.
Soviet courts to try spy cases this week. 3 tribunals will deal with 300 accusations, some of theft and murder.
There we go.
And
more Soviet news.
Yep, in a more English accent in case you weren't able to understand.
Soviet courts try spy cases this week. 3 tribunals will deal with 300 accusations, some of theft and murder.
Still the 1920s and the 2020s. Same thing. Here's one that we just found absolutely ridiculous. Aged man blows himself to pieces.
First of all, why don't you just say man? Commit suicide instead of aged man
blows himself to pieces. Like, we don't know that he blew himself into a bunch of pieces.
We do now.
Apparently. And we probably don't care to know his age until we actually read the article.
Which we can't do.
Yeah. But now I want to.
Sing, sing.
Convict. Goes to funeral.
Sing convict goes to funeral. That's news, I guess.
Apparently.
I can read a few more of these here. I know that I had glanced through these before, and I don't know how far I went. Oh, evidently I didn't go this far because I don't remember any of these. But we can find a good one.
Says, hold on,
one?
It's this one? Says British lack high-speed planes. Captain Sayres tells aeronautical engineers America has 4 and England none.
And look at us now.
Is it a race?
I don't know.
Apparently.
Or just airplanes, because, well, I guess airplanes were common, though, because of World War I. I don't know.
Yeah.
I'm not as well versed in World War One as I am in World War II.
Yeah, they would have just been coming out around World War I. Here's a headline, folks. It says, cool toward Coolidge. Apparently, people were cool toward him. I'm not as well versed in my presidents either.
Navy is deficient, Roosevelt admits. Puts ratio as 5-4-3.
Report submitted to House shows us in second place between Britain and Japan. Interesting. So apparently our Navy was not as good then.
Guess so. Oldest editor keeps his 85th birthday. Captain Rule of Knoxville has worn newspaper harness for 64 years. What?
Okay, I know what they mean, as in he's kept his position, but the way that was worded.
He's worn a harness made out of newspapers for 64 years. Well, good for Mr. Captain Rule here. Dispute over the monocle. French call it a badge of Prussian militarism, which Germans deny.
Interesting.
Is it talking about, like, the Mr. Peanut kind of monocle, or?
I wonder.
I have no idea. Boy Scouts. Now that brings up an interesting point.
Oh,
I just saw that, what was this, in the news, 3 days ago? That the Boy Scouts have been changed to, what is this?
Just Scouts of America or something like that.
Yeah.
Which I find interesting because, I mean, Boy Scouts was started for boys.
Boys, yeah, that's the idea.
And I mean, you've got Girl Scouts, so girls can obviously.
But now you've got so many other things besides boys and girls.
But now it's just Scouts.
Yep.
So.
I guess so.
Which is very sad, but.
It is. I wonder what people in the 1920s, like, I mean, the world wasn't perfect in the 1920s either, but stuff like this wasn't accepted, and rightfully it wasn't accepted. And people saw it for what it really was. And it was generally, the general public did not agree with such things. I wonder what the general person in 1924 would say if they saw the world today.
Well, first off, they would probably look at the tech. But second off, they would probably be slightly horrified.
Slightly, yeah. I find it sad, not in the 1920s per se, but I've seen interviews of World War II vets talking about what they fought for and how that has downfallen.
Indeed.
In the modern world, which I guess I'm getting a wee bit deep here, but
yeah. But
it's interesting.
The world today is interesting, both of headlines and what we can see from history.
And this is why we love history and why we look at it and why we're starting this podcast, really, to get other people to appreciate the history and where we came from.
Well, thank you for joining us and listening to us ramble about headlines and Lee the horse.
Oh, yeah, Lee.
The horse logger.
The horse logger, yeah.
Lee the horse logger.
So I'm Simmons.
I'm Lissie.
I'm Tula.
Thank you for listening.